Everybody, Saturday at 10:30, I'm happy to announce. I am very, very gratified by getting compliments about how well I like this program. It makes me feel great, but I also want to acknowledge that this is absolutely a team effort here. We have the dining and culinary services who bring us drinks and snacks. We have the life enrichment team. Sam is representing them here. They do a lot, and it's good, great. And our official videographer up there in the corner, saving all this for posterity. But of course, we have a very rich field to plow here with all of these people, with all these brilliant ideas and excellent skill in presenting them. And here is one of them this morning, Roger.
Does this sound good? First of all, I want to thank you all for braving the snow to get here. It means a lot to me personally. Different residents have come up to me now and then and asked me how I choose what I'm going to talk about. And the short answer is, it's usually something that interests me that I know almost nothing about. This morning's subject is a perfect example of that. I knew that, I kind of knew where Greenland was. I knew it was a big island. I knew it had a bunch of ice on it. And I also knew it was, you might call it a Danish colony. But that was really pretty much it. I also was under the impression that nobody really knew it was there until a bunch of Vikings kind of stumbled onto it. I have been wrong on a whole bunch of different levels. What I did find out was that it is a big island. It's the largest island in the world. But it has hardly any people on it. And the people that that live there are what we used to politically incorrectly identify as Eskimos. That's mainly who lives on Greenland. I really feel sorry for them because they're about to be caught up in a whirlwind. And they don't deserve it, but that's the way life works. So, first of all, let me talk to you a little bit about the history. I already told you that I thought that the Vikings stumbled onto it, and I was wrong. Another disclaimer, I do my research by reading, so nobody's there to correct me on pronunciations. So I'm going to give it my shot, and you can read along and make up your own pronunciation. But, so, archaeologists believe the first humans to reach Greenland were called, and I'm going to say Sequoia. They arrived about 2500 BCE. Concurrently, the Egyptians were building the pyramids in Giza. DNA testing has been facilitated by the frozen conditions. It shows a connection to migrations from Siberia, crossing to Alaska, and then across North America. However, the Sequoia were not just a branch of the humans that we refer to as Native Americans. They were a distinct migration from Siberia on their own. They settled on the southwest coast of Greenland because of the available slate with which they could make tools. Also, the southwest coast is not continually covered with ice. Their diet came from the sea: fish, shellfish, small mammals such as seals. They survived in near isolation until disappearing about 800 BCE. A couple of things about this. The first is, like I said, I had this image of the Vikings stumbling on, to the shores of Greenland. Obviously, that's completely wrong. The map that you see up there, that's a map of the world, and it shows human migration. We all kind of have the idea that human migration pretty much started in East Africa and then worked out from there. On this map, the orange is the oldest, and the purple is the most recent. So you have humans migrating, and they come across Siberia, they come across into Alaska, and then this upper purple line is the Sequoia. And so you see them come, the stick migration, they're coming along across, and then they come up and they come around, and there's where they settle. That is the southwest corner of Greenland. My first thought, first of all, I was amazed that I didn't know this. It's another example of how our history is all European-centered. But the other thought I had, and I've got to admit this. So, here they are, they migrate, come to Greenland, and they stay. And I had this image, of this Sequoia woman turning to her husband, George, and said, "George, this place there's nothing here, it's cold, how about we head south?" But amazingly enough, they didn't do that. Okay, while the Sequoia settled in the south, a similar but separate tribe settled in the north. Archaeologists refer to them as the Independence I culture, which lasted from 2400 BCE to 1900 BCE. They are named for the Independence Fjord in the northeast of Greenland. They differed primarily from the Sequoia by hunting muskox, but like the Sequoia, they also ate small marine mammals as well as shellfish and fish. Northern Greenland was uninhabited by humans for 1,200 years after the disappearance of the Independence I culture. About 700 BCE, another group, Independence II, arrived and settled in the same area. They also disappeared about 80 BCE. A fourth culture, referred to by archaeologists as the Dorset, arrived from Canada about 500 BCE. They survived until the year 1500, which means they would have had contact with the first Norse settlers. A fifth migration from Canada, the Thule Inuit, arrived about 1200. Their descendants make up 88% of the population of Greenland, which is currently about 56,000. Okay, so what do we learn from this? First of all, you can have a culture, some more successful than others, but for whatever reason, they don't last. And my own feeling is that the conditions are so harsh that you can have even a change in climate. You can overfish, or one of the theories is that the muskox were overhunted. But for whatever reason, these different cultures would last for a while and then they would disappear. And this is a theme of Greenland that is continued up to today. Vikings. Meanwhile, about the year 900, Gunnbjorn Ulfsson was blown off course on a voyage from Norway to Iceland. He sighted a large landmass but did not go ashore. This is regarded as the first European contact with Greenland. Erik Thorvaldsson, known to history as Erik the Red, was a Norwegian explorer who is credited with founding the first Norse settlement in Greenland. When 10-year-old Erik's father was banished from Norway for committing acts of manslaughter, the family relocated to Iceland. During Erik's life there, he married and had 4 children, including the future explorer, Leif Erikson. Like his father, Erik was also banished for 3 years in the year 982 because of violent behavior. He spent those years exploring the west coast of Greenland. When his banishment ended, he returned to Iceland with tales of a land he called Greenland because it was a more appealing name. After selling the idea of a new colony, he returned to Greenland in 985 with a large group of colonists. Anyway, I love these pictures because these guys really look like Vikings. And so, one of the things that I always do is I think about what else is happening at the same time as this is happening. And in Europe, this is what you might call the Dark Ages. And the building of great cathedrals was going on, but the people were living in squalid conditions. The only religion at that time was the Catholic Church. And here's a couple more pictures. So here you have Erik's colonists arriving in Greenland. And then this is actually a photograph where they have reconstructed what they think Erik's longhouse would have looked like. You can get a sense of what it's like to live in Greenland. This is in the summer.
Which week is summer?
Thank you, Ron. Okay, this is where I'm really going to get into trouble. Erik established multiple settlements on the west coast. These were the only areas suitable for farming. In the summer, the settlers would also sail north in search of seals, ivory from walrus tusks, and whales. The settlements flourished, growing to an estimated 5,000 colonists. Erik's wife, I'm going to go with Sjorhild, converted to Christianity, along with their son Leif. Remember Leif? By the way, if you want to see a great statue of Leif, go down to Shilshol Marina. However, Erik refused to give up his pagan beliefs, resulting, according to legend, in Sjorhild refusing to have sex with him. Erik died about 1003 during a winter epidemic. In the 14th century, the Norse settlements declined, possibly due to cooling climate. In the 15th century, they ceased to exist. The idea of Erik's wife withholding sex intrigued me because I had this image, not an image, but I had this memory of reading like a Greek play in the Peloponnesian War, where the Greek women used the same tactic to try and bring peace. So this is not new, and maybe this is where Erik's wife got the idea. Anyway, this is also a photograph of Greenland And this is a reconstruction of the first Christian church. And although kind of historically Eric the Red is the number one major character in the history of Greenland, I actually consider this guy here to be more important. Legends persisted in the Nordic world. Okay, remember that Eric's colonists pretty much disappeared. Legends persisted in the Nordic world that the Norse settlers were still alive and living in the southern fjords of Greenland. These legends reached Hans Egede, a Norwegian priest who thought that if this was true, they would need spiritual guidance. So in 1721, he arrived in Greenland and found only Inuit who had their own religion. In his efforts to convert them, he learned their language and converted Christian texts to a more understandable form. For example, since there was no bread in Greenland, the Lord's Prayer that he taught became the line, "Give us each day our daily meal." Egede established a Christian church and laid the foundations for the city of Nuuk, the present-day capital of Greenland. So this is 300 years ago. And like I said, this guy was incredibly important to the history of Greenland. In 1733, an Inuit child who had converted to Christianity was taken to Denmark. On his return, he brought smallpox. And this is another recurring theme of Europeans coming into established native cultures. Hundreds of the newly converted Inuits died, as well as Egede's wife. Egede's legacy is mixed. To many, he is revered for bringing Christianity and European culture to Greenland. To others, he is a symbol of colonialism. In recent years, his statue has been defaced. Many Greenlanders want it removed. The Greenland government decided not to celebrate the 300th anniversary of his arrival. Instead, in 2028, they will celebrate the 300th anniversary of the founding of Nuuk. So that's just a couple of years from now. The top picture up here, you have the Inuit seated around Egede, who's giving them a lesson in Christianity. And on this picture is, it depicts the devil and hell, which I'm sure that he said, you better listen up or this is your fate. This house here is his actual house. It was built in 1728. I was amazed at how perfect it is. And all of these building materials had to have come from like Norway and Denmark. This is the capital of Greenland today. This is Nuuk. You see this house right down here? It's this one. So the Greenland government still uses Egede's house for like receptions and different kinds of meetings. Up above Nuuk, here on this hill, you see this little thing at the top. That's the statue of Egede. That's the one that gets paint smeared on it, kind of like the statue of Lenin down in Fremont. like I said, his legacy is being completely thought about in a different way. Okay, now another little bit of European history. Denmark and Norway had been united under a single crown since 1380. I also didn't know that. So, Greenland was officially claimed by the claimed to be a Danish colony. The Danish government assumed a full monopoly of Greenland's trade, and to a certain degree, Greenland is still suffering from that decision. Denmark was brought into the Napoleonic Wars on the French side. The British were victorious in the Battle of Copenhagen in 1801, and Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo in 1814 ended the combined kingdom. So it was at that point, the Kingdom of Norway and Denmark was split up. Denmark was forced to cede Norway to Sweden, but was allowed to keep Greenland, Iceland, and the Faroe Islands. This was always contested by Norway, and to a certain degree it's still contested today. Meanwhile, the United States had been pursuing an expansionist foreign policy. After acquiring Alaska in 1867, Secretary of State William Seward also wanted Greenland. Congress saw little value and balked. In 1916, which interestingly enough is right in the middle of World War I, in 1916, the U.S. purchased the Danish West Indies for $25 million. They are now the U.S. Virgin Islands. As part of the agreement, the U.S. recognized Danish sovereignty over Greenland. During World War I, Denmark was a neutral country. In 1931, Norway occupied portions of Greenland. The dispute went to the Court of International Justice at The Hague, who ruled in Denmark's favor. So like I said, the Norwegians always felt that they had a stake in Greenland. Nobody obviously was asking the Inuit what they thought about all this. I should just mention, you can see this purple up here is the Kingdom of Norway and Denmark in 1812. So this is 1812 is the same year that Napoleon tried to conquer Russia. So this is right in the middle of the Napoleonic Wars. This is the depiction of the Battle of Copenhagen in 1801, where the British were victorious. In 1940, the Nazis invaded Denmark. Danish control of Greenland was severed. At the time, Henrik Kaufmann was the Danish ambassador to the U.S., posted in the summer of 1939 before the war. He declared that he would not receive and act on orders from the occupied Danish government. The U.S. recognized him as Denmark's official representative. An agreement was signed in June of 1941 that obligated the U.S. to defend the Danish colonies in Greenland from German aggression. In return, the U.S. was given the right to establish weather stations and military bases, which still exist. Greenland was returned to Danish control at the end of the war in 1945. The Danish government began to respond to the demands of the Greenlanders. The monopoly of the Royal Greenland Trading Company ended in 1951. The island became an integral part of the Kingdom of Denmark in 1953 with 2 seats in Parliament. Home rule was granted in 1979. So a couple of thoughts on all of this. First of all, this is the one that really surprised me. It's June of 1941, the U.S., Denmark is occupied by the Nazis at this point. But June of 1941 is quite a few months before Pearl Harbor. So we were technically neutral, but not really. Because at that point, we take over the defense of Denmark, of Greenland. And so the other thing about all of this, the last paragraph, what you see these different agreements that are reached, but what they're really saying is that they're going to give the Greenlanders a certain amount of autonomy over their own government. But in terms of the defense of Greenland, that's still done by the Danish. And the Danish are obviously a member of NATO. And you're thinking, why don't they give Greenland just independence? The reason is because there's 58,000 people in Greenland, and they could never defend themselves. In 1946, the U.S. offered Denmark $100 million for Greenland. The Truman administration viewed the island as geopolitically vital given the location for Arctic defense and mineral potential. Denmark rejected the offer. However, in 1951, the two countries reached an agreement to allow the U.S. to establish and operate Thule Air Force Base, now renamed Katufic Space Base. A couple of things. First of all, the top picture here. This is our Air Force Base in Greenland. Modern, up to date. This is part of the radar installation there, which is, was established and is still in place to be the first U.S. forces to see incoming Russian ICBMs. In 1957, Denmark created a policy of not allowing nuclear weapons in its home country of Denmark and its territories, including Greenland. Meanwhile, the United States created Operation Chrome Dome. I'm not making that up. 12 nuclear-armed B-52 bombers would be in the air at all times. Let me just say this. I think everybody in this room remembers this. Our defense was a triad. We had nuclear submarines with missiles. We had land-based missiles, mainly in North Dakota and Montana. And then we had B-52 bombers, 12 of them that were in the air continuously. And they went in a circular route. If you think of a circular route that starts in Texas, goes up our east coast to the west coast of Greenland, across the Arctic Circle, down around Alaska, through the Aleutian Islands, and then back to Texas. They made this circular route over and over again. And there was always 12 planes in the air. So that the idea was that with our submarines, with our land-based missiles, and with our B-52s, wipe the Russians off the face of the earth. And that was the way you gain peace. So, like I said, there was, Denmark did not want nuclear weapons in Denmark or their territories. Meanwhile, the United States, already read that, sorry. On January 21st, 1968, one of those bombers took off from Plattsburgh Air Base in New York State. The crew had mistakenly stacked 4 foam cushions on top of a heating vent in the crew compartment. The resulting fire so completely filled the plane with smoke that the crew could not read their instruments. 90 miles south of Thule Air Force Base, the crew parachuted out of the plane, killing 1. The plane crashed onto a frozen fjord 7 miles from the base. This was an incredible international incident. So what you have, first of all, this is a B-52. This is virtually exactly like the plane that crashed in Greenland. This is what one of the hydrogen bombs that it was carrying. It was carrying 4 of these, and this is what they look like. This is a painting, a recreation of what the crash scene looked like, and then you have a newspaper front page that talks about the fact that a B-52 had crashed and that there was, we had lost 4 hydrogen bombs. Radiation levels at the crash site spiked. Fortunately, although the bombs were broken up, the fire did not melt through them, which would have triggered their detonation. The U.S. military wanted to let the wreckage of the plane and bombs melt into the sea. The Danish government demanded that all parts of the plane and bombs, plus any contaminated sea ice, be loaded onto tanks and transported to the United States. Each of the bombs was 100 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. Okay, the top picture up here, this is one of the crew members from the B-52 being rescued. This is an actual photograph of the crash site after the fire had been put out. And here's one of the tanks that carried contaminated parts of the plane and contaminated sea ice back to the United States. So the crash was only like 6 weeks before. This is, so it's 13th of September 1968. And in good old USA, we got a great sense of humor. We just almost kind of lost 4 hydrogen bombs, but hey, that's all, folks. And there's still to this day a controversy over one of the bombs, because there's reports that it was not found or all of it was not recovered, which would mean that it's underneath a fjord in Greenland. Okay, back to, off of the military for a second, and just back to the people of Greenland. This is what the people of Greenland look like. Like I said, it's not politically correct, but they're essentially Eskimos. And so in the 1950s, a new Danish policy was established to modernize Greenland's hunter-fisher population. This included promoting the Danish language, education, and culture. 22 Inuit children were taken from their families and sent to Denmark, where they would be raised Danish. At the completion of their education, they were to be sent back to Greenland to assume leadership positions. Later, the Danish government felt the population growth of the Inuit was becoming a financial burden. As a result, during the 1960s and 70s, thousands of Inuit women and girls were fitted with contraceptive devices, often without informed consent. This is not a new story, is it? In 1979, Greenland gained its own parliament and leadership. In 2009, their government was given control over most domestic affairs. As a member of NATO, Denmark takes responsibility for the security of Greenland. Also, Denmark subsidizes Greenland's economy by about $591 million a year, which is about 60% of the local government's budget. This is about $10,000 for every person living in Greenland. Local support for total independence is strong. However, without considerable investment by other countries, this would be impractical. Historically, the Danish government has isolated Greenland economically from the rest of the world. This is a dangerous world. Greenland would be incapable of defending itself. Also, the population of Greenland is about 57,000, which is about the same as Olympia, Washington. 89% are Greenlandic, and this should say Inuit, another autocorrect. 7% Danish and 4% other. Recent polls show 85% of Greenlanders oppose any U.S. takeover. So, first of all, like I said, unfortunately, there's not enough people living in Greenland to make a country out of it. So their defense is always going to have to come from somewhere else. The other thing is, because of being isolated economically from the rest of the world by Denmark, their economy has a long ways to go before it can become self-supporting. Because of that, essentially the government of Greenland is, you need X number of dollars to run the government. It comes from Denmark. So, why does Denmark want to hold on to Greenland? Part of the reason comes from Denmark's history. History there for 300 years. No country wants to be seen as being in decline. Also, as global warming continues, the vast oil and mineral reserves will become more accessible. Along the same lines, the Arctic will become more important for both shipping and security issues. Denmark's control allows it to play a significant role in geopolitical discussions and arrangements related to the Arctic. Okay, the top picture is the Greenland flag and the Danish flag, and this is another picture of Nook. This is the statue that I told you about of Agave, who, the Norwegian priest who brought Christianity to Greenland. This is the one that a lot of Greenlanders want to have taken away. It's similar to Civil War statues in the U.S. So, why does Trump want Greenland? Greenland has estimated vast reserves of oil, uranium, and iron. It also is estimated to have the 8th largest reserves of rare earth metals. These metals have multiple uses, including consumer electronics, MRI machines, weapons systems, etc. Rare earths are also in missile guidance, radar, and sonar. They also are crucial to satellites and advanced aircraft. The U.S. lacks a reliable end-to-end supply chain for rare earths, leaving us dependent on foreign sources. On foreign sources. China accounts for 70% of mining and up to 90% of processing of rare earth metals. Also, as global warming continues, which of course is a hoax, shipping lanes will open, which will greatly reduce transport times from all points on the northern hemisphere. The dominance and defense of these lanes will be an important part of the future global security. Both Russia and China have stepped up production of icebreakers, with Russia being the only world power using nuclear power in their fleet. So the top picture, so you have a map of North America really. Here's Greenland up here. You can always tell it's all white. And here's Nook down here. I forgot that it used to be it's now a space base. It used to be Thule Air Force Base. It's right about here. But you can see a potential route down to Seattle. And essentially you're eliminating the Panama Canal. This is, I'm sure a lot of you recognize this ship. This is the Polar Star, and it's headquartered in downtown Seattle. It can go through 26 feet of ice, but it's the only operating icebreaker on the West Coast for the United States. The good news is that we do have new icebreakers being built right now. We're very much behind the production of China and Russia. The Arctic is going to be the next geopolitical, I don't know, hopefully it's not a war. So we'll all kind of see what happens. You can see our leader up there, what he wants, and a picture of him in a Viking boat. And in terms of what's going to happen there, it's really difficult to guess. I know for sure that because of the minerals and oil, that nobody is going to pretend that Greenland isn't there. And I feel sorry for the people that live there, because they are in the middle of a world struggle. And I hope for the best for them. But essentially, that's my talk. So, thank you for listening.
Anyone have a question or a comment?
I've just been given the microphone. So, obviously Greenland doesn't have anything much to export to the rest of the world in terms of being able to sustain an economy without help. But given what everybody wants from Greenland, which you've just described, the minerals and the oil and the Arctic routes, doesn't that give Greenlanders themselves an enormous point of leverage? Can't they use that to get what they want in terms of allowing things to happen to their country or not?
It's an interesting thought. My own personal feeling about Greenland is that this is going to be a strange analogy, but it reminds me of Saudi Arabia. Because there's nothing in Saudi Arabia except oil. And look what they've done with their economy. I think that there is a potential for the people of Greenland to have incredible prosperity because of the minerals and oil that are there. But in order for them to cash in on that, they would have to be allowed to do it, which I don't see happening.
2 points. Is Greenland in the US new sphere of influence touted by Trump? That's number one. Secondly, what's wrong with each Greenlander getting $1 billion from the USA and leaving for Florida?
Excellent questions. First of all, I think you're correct. I think that in Donald Trump's, in his mind, he kind of, he probably has never heard of the Monroe Doctrine, but he has his own Trump doctrine in his head, I think, which is that we have our sphere of influence is in, what would be called the New World, North America, South America. If you were going to talk about Greenland having, being in any country's sphere of influence, I would guess it would be Canada, because it's right there. And what was your second question?
Go to Florida, each
Oh, the $1 million.
inhabitant.
That's, and really, I had never thought of that. And it would be chump change for the U.S. because that would cost us, I can't do the math in my head. I don't have my calculator with me. But it would not be a lot of money. But I don't think the Greenlanders want money. I think they just kind of want to be left in peace to live the life that they've been living for hundreds of years.
I have a less serious question.
It's Dick's turn.
I'm sorry.
Totally get off that subject. What the Danes did with the Inuit echoes perfectly what the U.S. did with the Southwestern natives.
Also, yes, I agree. Also with the treatment of the Native Americans by the Canadians. It's almost all, and you know what it is? It's really one culture thinking that they're superior. It's just this, it's the arrogance is incredible.
I have a trivial question. Looking at that cartoon up there, are there actually polar bears in Greenland?
Say that again.
Are there polar bears in Greenland?
I should have looked into that.
I know the answer, there actually are.
I would guess that there should be at least. There's lots of seals and all of the stuff you think of. If you think of like Alaska, I don't think it's like there's an awful lot of difference. It's all depending on how close you are to the Arctic Circle.
Abby got that first, so.
Roger, do you have any idea or any sense of how much the U.S. bases in Greenland prop up the economy there for the people?
I think it's very little because Nook is down in the southwest corner. Our space base is way up further up on the west coast with, so there's no geographic connection between the people of Greenland and our base. I think it's just up there, probably it has a little McDonald's and, Starbucks and for all of the U.S. forces, and there's no connection to Greenland at all.
Are the rare earths and the petroleum of Greenland hypothetical, or has anybody actually located them?
I think they have made significant efforts to find out if they're there, and they are. What the main thing is that everybody's waiting for is for the ice to melt. And then, because a lot of it is underneath
Hundreds of feet of ice.
hundreds of feet of ice, and so I think that's. But there's no way, realistically, that I can conceive of them being left alone with all that. It's, we're everybody in this room that has a smartphone, you've got rare earths in your pocket. It's just too big of a deal in our lives.
Roger, is alcoholism a problem in the population?
Good question, Charlie. I'm not sure. I would guess it is. I would think it is. Because of different native communities, similar, in northern part of North America have that problem, and I don't see how they could escape it.
The oil and rare earths and perhaps other minerals are, as you say, very deep under a lot of ice. So the costs of acquiring and all those substances would be enormous and have significant ecological damage in the process. Certainly the Greenlanders can't do it by themselves, so it would have to be some large companies from other countries, including certainly the U.S., but Russia could also provide that kind of construction and extraction technology. So I think that makes Greenland, even with those difficulties, it makes Greenland a very tempting target for the major world powers.
And actually, when I was first reading about this, what it reminded me of was the difficulty in extracting oil from beneath the ocean. And that was, if the prize is big enough, it can be done. But you're right, it would take a tremendous amount of money. And so that the big U.S. and world oil companies, mining companies, they would be the ones that would do it.
I just wanted to confirm Roger's answer about alcoholism. I've actually been to Greenland, and it reported for the Baltimore Sun, of course. And that was one of the things that they talked about, was that it really is a problem. And also, the capital city is a two-syllable word, Nuuk.
It's
Nuuk. You pronounce both of those U's. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I gave it my best shot. But before we ask another question, who's been to Greenland?
Oh,
Okay.
of course.
I have not, but Barney Jonas was there very recently. Is she here today? No.
I can't hear you.
Barb Donat was there quite recently.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
But
She-
she's not here
She's not here to tell us
So
about
it says
it.
3.
Okay, well, I guess it's not often visited. Lowell and then you, okay.
It's interesting you said that it would take foreign industry or nations or whatever to extract the resources. Well, the Saudis, the Arabs didn't do it. All of the oil in Saudi Arabia was exploited by U.S., Dutch, and British firms.
Yeah, that seems to be how it works.
Hey, Roger, I don't think any great, huge American companies are going to go into Greenland. In fact, they're very small startup companies. In fact, but you can buy stock in one. I did this last week.
Well,
How far down is that stock?
North Sea oil was delivered by the Texans, not by the Norwegians.
It takes America.
I just bought myself a fully electric car. I think the supply of electricity is going to be a little more reliable than the supply of petroleum for a while. Anybody else? Okay.
Whether Greenland is militarily important is a very significant question, but it conveniently diverts away from the question of the condition of our military and the direction that it's taking. You look at Iran and what's going on there now, and do you want to entrust the defense of Greenland to the Defense Department of the United States? That question is never faced if you just talk about Greenland in isolation from politics of the.
Currently, Greenland there's almost no defense. I think the Danes have sent a, warship there or something, but it's not like Iran is, heavily militarized, and Greenland is. I hate to think of it, but I think it's about to become heavily militarized.
But do you trust this American Defense Department to control Greenland in a way that makes any sense?
That's got to be a rhetorical question.
Oh, it is rhetorical. We live in a rhetorical world.
Do you trust the U.S. Defense Department?
Yeah, at this point, with all of this, we're all kind of continually surprised by what happens. And so the Defense Department already has a very strong presence in Greenland. And I expect that to increase. Again, we'll see what happens.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.